Have you secured your spot for the premier event for medical surgical nurses?
The 2026 AMSN Convention is giving you a refreshing desert backdrop in Palm Springs, California, from September 24th through 26th. Join us and experience 3 days of unmatched and forward-thinking learning, networking, and impactful conversations with medical surgical peers who understand your day-to-day challenges.
By attending this year's convention, you'll earn up to 19 contact hours to maintain your credentials and ensure you stay at the forefront of the nursing field and medical surgical specialty.
Register now at amsn.org/events/AMSN-convention, and we'll see you under the Palm Springs sun.
On this episode of med-surg Moments,
we're exploring how med-surg nurses can strengthen collaboration with patient care technicians.
Joining us is Abigail Baugh, an adult-gerontology acute care nurse practitioner.
I went on a mission trip after Katrina and helped clean up, and it was in that moment that I was really called to nursing. I did become a nurse tech in the middle of nursing school, and that helped me really understand bedside nursing.
When you think about the best nurse patient care tech teams, what made them work?
And she had just whipped the IV out of her arm and apparently just been having a party with the blood bag.
Have you ever had a moment where a nurse and a patient care technician really leaned on each other?
This was a different type of encephalitis. I had this young man for about 6 hours of that shift. He sat and sang, "Watch her, watch her, watch her, H2O, 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 I want watch her, watch her, watch her." When you're that bedside nurse, you're that leader. When you're that nurse practitioner.
how do you think that nurses and PCTs can better support and appreciate each other's contributions?
For someone that's just starting out as a nurse, what would you want them to know about building strong working relationships from the beginning?
What is their love language?
Definitely not more pizza parties.
This is Marcella,
Eric?
Trish.
Elaine,
Sydney.
and Haley. Welcome to med-surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
This podcast is an engaging look at the lives of and surrounding medical surgical nurses.
We're proud med-surg nurses just like you, sharing our stories, insights, and experiences to support you in your nursing journey.
Strong patient care depends on more than individual skill. It requires nurses and patient care technicians to communicate clearly, understand one another's roles, and work together as a unified team.
When that collaboration is strong, patients benefit, workflows improve, and everyone at the bedside feels better supported.
But when collaboration is weak, there's missed expectations, and frustration can quickly take over.
In this episode, we're exploring how med-surg nurses can strengthen collaboration with patient care technicians, improve delegation, and build a more respectful and supportive care environment.
Joining us is Abigail Baugh, an adult-gerontology acute care nurse practitioner at East Carolina University Health with a background in critical care and cardiac intensive care nursing.
Abby is a passionate advocate for mentorship and professional development. She helped create ECU Health's app mentoring program and recently earned her Doctor of Nursing Practice degree from Yale University with a focus on healthcare leadership, systems, policy, and advocacy for patients and bedside nurses. Abby, welcome to med-surg Moments.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Abby, before we dive into our conversation, we'd love for you to share your story with our listeners.
I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. I am a Midwest girl. Initially, I thought I was going to go into business. I did a lot of business club in high school. I was really kind of top of my game there. But I really didn't like the person I was becoming as I was doing it. I went on a mission trip after Katrina and helped clean up, and it was in that moment that I was really called to nursing. And so my whole high school career kind of shifted, and I started taking classes directed solely at nursing, AP biology, AP statistics, and I began to work on my nursing assistant. By 18, when I was going into college, I knew I was going to go into nursing, chose my college for nursing. I did become a nurse tech in the middle of nursing school, and that helped me really understand bedside nursing. Got my bachelor's in nursing from University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. Then I moved down to North Carolina and worked at Duke University Hospital as a neuro step-down nurse for 5 years before I went back and got my master's from Duke in nurse practitioning. I stepped into the role as a critical care nurse practitioner in the cardiac ICU at ECU Health, and that's where I've been for the last 8 years. There's been a lot of leadership moments. I was that nurse that helped implement purposeful rounding that I know we all love so much when I was a bedside nurse, and I've started mentor programs, and so that was what really drove me to get my leadership doctorate from Yale University last year. So that's my story in a nutshell.
What lessons from your PCT days do you still carry with you as a nurse today?
So many. I worked in a nursing home. It was a bit of a combination. So it had 3 different sections. It had an acute rehab section, and that housed about 60 different patients. We had a nursing home floor that had 150 residents. And then we also had a hospice unit, and that was very individualized, very small. So that was about 10 beds, I think. And I rotated between all of them as a patient technician. And then when I became a nurse technician, I rotated between all of them. And in that time, there's so much of my skills as a nurse practitioner that are so foundational. My time management, I gained as a patient care technician. When I worked on the nursing home side, I would be put down one hallway and have about 50 residents to myself. And I would start my night shift on one end, check everyone, change everyone, go all the way to the other end. And by the end of that, it was 2 hours and it was time to start all over again. And if I got done early, I was cleaning wheelchairs, I was changing out toothbrushes. There was always a chore list that we had to do. So it really pushed me to manage my time well, because then I also had to chart. I still had to chart as the patient care technician. It also really pushed me to my memory. I could remember those patients and what they needed, those residents and what they needed, without having to reference my brain. And that's still a skill that I use as a nurse practitioner today. It wasn't something I was good at initially, but when you need that extra time to constantly be whipping out a sheet and being like, wait, what is this patient? It really pushed my brain to be like, okay, you got to absorb this. You got to listen. You got to remember what they say, what's happening. And now I'll be in a patient's room that's coding, and I'll be able to be like, oh yes, this is this patient. This is what we're doing. I don't really have to be like, hold on, who are we talking about here? And then the flexibility, because I was rotated so much, because I was kind of thrown in different situations. Someday I'd be a patient care technician. Some nights I'd be the nurse tech. Sometimes I'd be sitting one-on-one with a resident. Sometimes I would be start on one hall and then move to another. And I think that that's something that patient care technicians experience a lot. It's helped me maintain that flexibility throughout my whole career. It's made floating, going to different units, working with different patients, that I'm able to do that with so much more flexibility than I think sometimes I see other people. Being a patient care technician, being that nurse's aide at the foundation of my career created such a strong foundation. Even in interviews today when they're like, tell me about a time when you were busy. How did you handle it? I'm always like, there is no busier night than 150 residents on a full moon with the dementia unit. And my one resident that loved to sneak out and get the fire extinguisher, my other resident that loved to break in and eat the ice cream. Like, you're not going to find a hospital busier than that. You're not going to find a nursing role, nurse practitioner role busier than that.
You are so right. That brings back memories for me too, I gotta admit. When you think about the best nurse patient care tech teams, what made them work? What about those relationships worked so well?
I think communication is the key. When I was a patient care technician, I remember I had one nurse that I just absolutely loved. I still occasionally talk to today. Her name's Pam, and she really guided me in my nursing career, but she taught me so much of the why behind certain things were important. And I was gaining them as I was going through nursing school, but she kind of taught it to me early on. And so it made it so much easier for us to work together. As a nurse, it was kind of the same situation, but it was so much communication, so much understanding that we're on the same team. In prepping for this, I remembered there was one incident where on the neuro unit, patients aren't always all there. That's what we love about being neuro nurses. For my neuro nurses out there, I know the med-surg nurses also understand that fully. But we had one patient, she needed some blood. She was a little bit confused. Hooked up the blood, did my checks, came back later, and she had just whipped the IV out of her arm and apparently just been having a party with the blood bag. And so there was blood everywhere. It looked like the scene from Carrie. There was blood on the ceiling, there was blood under the bed, there was blood all over her, everywhere. And it could have been, you should have done this and you've got to do that situation. But me and my tech were able to clean the whole room, ceiling and all, and under the bed together and enjoy that time, just kind of knowing that we were both in it together. It wasn't one person's responsibility over another. And I think it's those moments that always reminded me the communication is such a key piece. As nurses, we have to remember we're that leader at the bedside to those care technicians. And Pam taught me that early on. She was the leader to me in my nursing home. And so I always tried to carry that on as a bedside nurse, that I'm the leader, I'm delegating to you, but we're on a team together. Just because you can do something doesn't mean I can't do something either.
That's such a great way to put it. Teamwork instead of being a hierarchical. But I'm sure you've got tons of stories. Have you ever had a moment where a nurse and a patient care technician really leaned on each other to get through like a challenging shift?
Oh, yes. On my unit, when I was a neuro nurse, we had one doctor that specialized in brain on fire because there's a book called Brain on Fire, and it's a limbic encephalitis that is specifically from the ovaries, and it affects young girls about 20 to 25. Highly recommend the book. It's told from the perspective of a patient undergoing it and her experience suffering from this. It causes a lot of psychoses. There's a lot of encephalopathy. They're confused. And we had one long-term girl, and she was confused, but she was smart enough to know how to kind of get to us, is I think the nicest way I can say it. And she ended up having to be with us long-term as we worked on getting her into a group home, and that can take a while. In those situations, she would elope a lot. She would run away a lot, fight a lot. She would do some behavioral things, and a lot of it was driven from this disease process. She knew she could rip off her EKG leads and we'd all have to come in. She knew she could lift up her butt and then the bed alarm would go off and we'd all have to come in. So there were these behavioral issues. And if one person is dealing with that constantly, you can imagine that can really wear you down at the end of a 12-hour shift. And for that 6-month period, everyone on the unit, that nurse partner and that patient care partner, every day really had to come together, come up with a plan. How are we going to kind of tag team this so we can keep giving her the best care possible, the best empathetic care possible, and not allow her psychoses to burn us out and put us in a place where we're maybe not delivering the best care. And so that was always really amazing. in like a long term. Now, for a more specific story, this was a different type of encephalitis. And I had this young man, same kind of thing, but it's driven from a different place. And he was very aggressive due to it. Again, this is all driven from the disease process. And so he had to be in 4-point restraints, and my patient care attendant had to be 1-to-1 with him. And so we had to pull them off the floor. We ended up kind of taking shifts, and they would sit in there for an hour. I would go do my things, and we kind of tag team in and out, because for about 6 hours of that shift, he sat and sang. I still remember to this day because it was nonstop for 6 hours. Water, 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 H2O, H2O, H2O. I want water, 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 H2O, H2O, H2O. Because he had to be NPO so that we could sedate him, so that we could get the imaging done that we needed. And it was like sitting on It's a Small World after all. After her first hour in there, I remember her coming out and being like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I was like, okay, I got you. We finally got him to stop. We finally got him distracted. We finally got him calmed down. And then another nurse on the floor came over and was like chatting with him. And you know what she came over with? Big old cup of water. Started drinking it in front of him. And he was like, water. And I was like, no, we just got it to end. And then we were back on It's a Small World after all. You can have these big moments of every day you're in it and you're talking about how are we going to do this? But it's also those small moments of, okay, this is going to drive anyone crazy. So we gotta help each other. We just gotta be human together.
That is such a good example of the team effort it takes to provide patient care. I know some people really get focused on the job titles, but how do you think that nurses and PCTs can better support and appreciate each other's contributions, knowing that this is such a team effort?
This is something that I had always kind of been passionate about at every level. I'll say, having stepped through so many iterations of nursing, being the patient care technician, being a nurse technician, an RN, and now an NP, and now going into kind of the administrative side, I'll say at each level, it has made me better at the current job I'm doing, because I began to understand so much more how important my role was, and we need to do a better job of instilling that. As a nurse practitioner, I really try to instill in my nurses, I can't do this without you. What you're doing is important. What you're charting is important. I'm looking at it. I need those eyes and nose in. You think I'm not looking, but I'm looking. So put that PO in. And it was the same as a nurse. As I became a nurse and was going through a nursing school, I became such a better patient care technician, because I finally understood, oh, someone is looking at those bowel movements that I'm charting every day. And as I'm having to sit and look and count how many days Betty hasn't gone to the bathroom, and now I have to go and give a suppository, knowing that there were times that I was like, who cares if I don't chart that bowel movement? No one's looking at it. And now I'm like, she probably has gone to the bathroom, but I don't have it documented. So now I have to go and give poor Betty a suppository, and poor me too, because I have to give the suppository. At each level, I became so much better at the current job I was doing because I understood why better. So we need to instill that. We need to take that time. Again, being that leader at the bedside. And this is across the board. Even if you're a patient care technician, you're still a leader. If you've been there a year and everyone else has been there a month, you're that leader to them. When you're that bedside nurse, you're that leader. When you're that nurse practitioner, you're that leader. You're a leader to everyone at some point. And if you're the newest person on the unit, you're the newest patient care technician, you're a leader to yourself. And at the end of the day, you're leading yourself, is what I truly believe. The other thing that I say to nurses a lot, because there's always this one memory that I have. One of my patient care technicians was like, Abby's always got our back. Abby always has our back. It was because there was one day, one of the older nurses kept walking around the unit looking for the patient care technician. And finally I was like, what are you doing? What do you need help with? I'm not doing anything. Let me help you. And they had been walking a lot. And I thought maybe it was like a specific conversation at first, something that they needed to address. But then I was like, what's going on? Can I do something? They're like, I need oxygen set up in this room. Well, hold up. I was like, you can set up oxygen. I can set up oxygen. Anyone can set up oxygen. You've spent more time walking around trying to find that patient care technician to set up the oxygen than it would have taken you to just set it up. And so I told my nurse colleague, I was like, that's ridiculous. I was like, I'll go set it up if you think you're above it. I don't care. But now I say the same thing to nurses. You all are nurses. When a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a PA, whoever, the provider leaves the room, they've spent 20 minutes in that room talking to the patient, and then they come out and they say, hey, they need a cup of ice. How much does it aggravate you that they just did that? So annoying. It's so annoying. You can't get a cup of ice. You can't get them the cup of ice water. And how many times have you seen a nurse go, it's right over there. It's right over there. That's where the ice water is. But we do the same thing sometimes as nurses to our nursing assistants. And we need to remember that. We don't like when the providers do it to us as the bedside nurse. Our nursing assistants, while they're there to help us, yes, they're not going to like it either. If you're interrupting them to do something that you could have easily done, are you really being that leader at the bedside? Same thing with that doctor. Are they being that leader at the bedside when they're not just taking the extra minute to get that cup of water? Now, there's always times, there's always caveats. I'm not saying that, but you do need to be that leader. And as a nurse, I think that that's our job. And keeping that in mind, taking that time to educate your nurses' aides, your patient care technicians is so important. And it's the same at every level. And I have to remind myself too, as a nurse practitioner, hey, you got to take that time to explain why you need that INO, because I'm about to redose 80 of Lasix because it looks like they haven't peed, as opposed to just being like, I am looking. Do you want more urine to come out?
That's such an important point to really appreciate everything that the patient care techs are doing. And it's so good that you have that perspective of, I think nurses always make the jokes like, doctors should have to be a nurse before they go to medical school so that they know what they're asking us to do. And it's so valuable to have that experience on the other side of being a patient care tech, then nurse to nurse practitioner, for really appreciating what their job entails. When I was going through my nurse residency, when we were first starting out, we obviously had to do everything ourselves, even though we had patient care techs on the floor. For the first couple of months, we were doing everything ourselves just to get that time management, but also I think it did help build an appreciation for when you were able to delegate to your team members, or you had someone assigned to your team that was like, oh man, this is really nice to have someone help me out with vitals today. Or it's really nice to have that second set of hands for bed changes and all these kinds of things. So having that appreciation for your teammates is so important. For someone that's just starting out as a nurse or a patient care technician, what would you want them to know about building strong working relationships from the beginning?
I think the biggest thing that people need to know coming in is you have to be okay asking questions. And sometimes people aren't going to be okay with that. And you need to remember that's a them problem. It's not a you problem. Someone gets mad at you for asking a clarifying question or just asking the reason why, that's a them problem. Now, if you've asked this question 10 times and you're not remembering and they've told you 10 times nicely, that's a different story. But for the most part, if someone's getting mad at you for asking why when people have the time, that's a them problem. I think the other side is receiving feedback. As you're stepping into a new role as a patient care technician, as an RN or anything, you're going to receive feedback. And it's important to receive feedback in all the ways. You have to be observant. Sometimes it's very direct, maybe too direct, and people can work on that. And you can always give feedback like, okay, I hear you, but that maybe wasn't the nicest. But there's also observing feedback of, okay, they went back in and changed my charting. Why did they do that? They went back in and did this. Why did they do that? Oh, they fixed the room like this. Why did they do that? So there's feedback in direct ways and there's feedback in observing. And that's really what has also made me very strong throughout my career is watching others and learning from them, being willing to take the feedback, even when it's hard, even when it's hurt my feelings. I've told them that hurt my feelings, but I can sit back and, okay, maybe there is some validity to that. Maybe, recently I used to love wearing big, colorful bows, and someone recently was like, maybe you're getting a little too old for that. And I was like, I love them. But then I was like, maybe 35, I shouldn't have a giant pink bow on my head.
Never give up your bows.
They were really big. And maybe in the admin something I'm not taking so seriously because I got a giant pink bow on my head. I can reserve them for my fun times. But taking that feedback, being observant, being okay asking questions, being okay being wrong, all of those things we just need to get comfortable with. And in healthcare, we're naturally not comfortable with it because this is such a type A place. We all want to be the best, do the best, take care of our patients the best. Like, I don't believe that there's anyone that comes into healthcare with any ill will. We're all here because we want to take such good care of our patients. Sometimes it's hard for us to accept that I'm in a new role and I need feedback, and that's okay. So be observant, ask questions, and take that feedback. And also be prepared to be like, I'll take that feedback, but can we do it nicer next time?
It's so funny you said that because we literally just recorded an episode about bullying in the workplace and taking feedback and perception and all those kinds of things you just said. So that's just funny that you mentioned it that way.
That's like one of those areas of professional development. Like I'm always so passionate about mentoring, but part of mentoring is knowing how to give great feedback, knowing how to accept feedback, and how to observe for feedback. You have to be able to observe for patterns to see things because sometimes people aren't going to be comfortable. All of that is the cornerstone of building your own emotional intelligence. But it is so important, and bullying is never okay. So if it is true bullying, you need to talk to someone, get it documented, and get it addressed early. The longer you wait, the harder it's going to be.
So how do you think that our patient care techs like to feel appreciated? What is their love language? Do we do enough of that?
Probably not. It's been a long time since I've been a patient care technician, but I can say even then there was very little appreciation. But I think that's at every level. I think we all need to be better at giving each other appreciation. One of the things I like to do as a nurse practitioner is when someone's done a really good job, really stepped it up, exceeded my expectations for them, I like to write them a little handwritten note, just being like, you did a really, really great job. And then as Mark knows, I always do my handwritten notes with a wax seal, which everyone thinks is so fancy and nice. But I know some people that still have their notes. They still carry them. So it doesn't need to be big, grand gestures, definitely not more pizza parties, but it can be something as simple as a note. If you have a really hard shift and your patient care attendant was like right there in the trenches with you, just write them a little note. In our team, as a bedside nurse, one of the initiatives I did was we had a kudos board. And each month you could just write a kudos, hey, so-and-so did great, helped me with this on this day. And every month before the staff meeting, I'd take them all down and kind of count them. And then the top people, we would give them a float pass. A float pass is when you were floated, you get to say, oh, this is my float pass, but that date gets to be written down in the float book as if you got floated. So it counts as your float.
That's really cool. I like that. I've not heard about that.
Sometimes you're like, yeah, I'll go for the float. But sometimes you're just like, I just don't want to. It's day 2 of 3. I don't want my schedule broken up. And it was just simple. And we would read out some of the best kudos at the meeting as well. And so it's every month. So it wasn't like, oh, it's been up there for a year. Yeah, we've seen that. Every month it was taken down. I would make a new theme. So it can be something as simple as that on your unit, something as personal as a little card, just a simple thank you.
I like that. Yeah, that float pass and the little cards. And this year, we typically don't do this, but this year we actually celebrated Nurses Week. Of course, they get on that, but they have their own day, their own week. And we made a big deal about it this year, thinking, they really do deserve at least a day, right?
Yeah.
And they loved that. So intentionally celebrating them, they love that too. You would be so fun to work with. You really would.
I was a bit of a prankster sometimes. There was a lot of construction. And as you know, with construction comes cockroaches. And unfortunately, we were in an old part of the building. And I just thought it was so funny. We had like one cockroach show up one day. And so I bought a bunch of fake ones. I would hide them in like places that patients could never find, would never see. But also like a cockroach would never end up in the PCA key drawer. I had one there once. There was another time I jumped out of one of the patient closets to wake someone up because they kept nodding off in the middle of the night. And I was like, okay, go set up this room. We're going to have a patient come. And I hid in the closet and jumped. They did fall into the wall. I felt a little bit bad, but they laughed. I laughed. And they did not fall asleep after that. They were wide awake.
That is great. Way to keep it fun, though.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Abby, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. It's truly been an inspiration having you with us on med-surg Moments.
Thank you so much for having me. I wish you guys the best of luck.
To our listeners, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
We look forward to connecting with you on the next episode of med-surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
In the meantime, we encourage you to subscribe to med-surg Moments wherever you listen to podcasts.
To reach us, use hashtag MedSurgMoments on your social post.
Or send us an email at amsnpod@amsn.org. That's amsnpod@amsn.org.
We're all AMSN members, and if you love med-surg Moments, we invite you to become a member of AMSN. You can learn more at www.amsn.org.
Finally, the content within the med-surg Moments podcast represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the co-hosts and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, and opinions of the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses.
Until next time, this is Sydney.
Eric?
Trish.
Kelly.
Haley.
And Marcella. And always remember, med-surg Moments is a moment in our lives and a moment in our med-surg careers that makes a huge difference.